Original Firefighter is the podcast and apparel brand that celebrates the heritage and traditions of the American Fire Service. Join us each week for lively discussions that aim to inspire, educate, and entertain, all in the effort to support mental health and well-being for first responders. Please subscribe, hit that bell, and follow us wherever you listen. Let's get into the show. Welcome to the show, folks. My name is Will Peterson. I am your host, and with me today I have the Stillman Valley Fire Protection District Fire Chief Chad Hoefle with us today, and I appreciate you being here in the studio with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Chad, how's everything going?
Things are good. Things are, things are busy. Things are consistent. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consistent in, you said, before we came on the show, you said you're being consistent in busy in the Stillman Valley way.
As it said, Stillman Valley busy. So, fire protection districts, we volunteer world, paid on call world. People are itching to go on calls. We don't want bad things to happen, but we want to go on calls. And so we stay busy when something happens. People get excited. They get a little revamped. And then we come back, we critique and move on to the next one. So,
right.
Yeah. So we're staying fairly busy, and, it's a dynamic world in the fire service today. So, rolling with the punches.
What's the difference between a municipality run fire department versus fire protection district? What's the differences there?
A district is just better. No, I'm just kidding.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Municipal departments are funded. We have the mayor. The hierarchy's different. You're sharing money. You share money with the cops and the whoever's running the plows and the streets and things like that. With the fire protection district, we are run primarily on property taxes, and so we levy for money to be given to the fire district, and that money is ours as a fire district. We have a board of trustees that approves the budget from the fire chief, and then that money's ours. We don't have to share it. We can't get money taken away from us by a mayor or anything like that. So, so a protection district, really, we're independently run with the board of trustees and a fire chief.
I gotcha.
So it's the world I know. It's the world that I love in the fire service. This is my 29th year doing it. And I understand the municipal side because I work with a lot of municipal fire chiefs and boards and things like that. But at this point in my life, protection district's the way to go. I don't have to deal with some of those politics. Yeah. So
I asked, and I've got a little bit of background of the understanding side of it. I just wanted to ask for the show, but but for 33 years, I've never worked for a fire protection district.
Right.
So, that is meaningful to me, to understand what you have to go through in order to manage your district, your fire protection organization. So it sounds like you've been doing this for a while. Just give us a little bit of background of yourself, if you will.
So I started as a cadet on the fire department, Stillman Fire Protection District. I was 16 years old. Quick story. I lived on my own when I was 16 years old, working at night, working during the day. Had no ambition to be a firefighter at all. And because I worked so many hours, a lot of times I ended up falling asleep in high school. And so I was in a class, fell asleep in class, woke up at the end of the class because the announcements came on, and I didn't have the homework done in front of me that was assigned at the beginning of class. And the announcements came on and said, anybody interested in being a fire cadet, come to the office and sign up. And so I darted out of the room, ran to the office, signed the sheet, said, I'll be a firefighter. It was to get me out of class. And then I looked at the top of the sheet and it said, meet at the fire station this coming up Wednesday at 7:00. It was the only night of the week that I didn't have work that week. So I thought, man, if this teacher checks up on me, I need to be at the fire station on Wednesday at 7. So I went Wednesday at 7 and never stopped going. And so that was the start of my fire service career, and I just kept on going, worked my way through, became a paramedic, as you do when you're younger and you want to go someplace, with your fire service career. I didn't intend to be at Stillman forever. We were a 100% volunteer department at the time. Our only payment was a steak dinner once a year, and at the time that was the best payment ever. We did it because we wanted to do it. We put in countless hours of training. Truly loved the job as much as I did then. But worked my way. The department's needs changed. They moved into a part-time fire chief, and then they had part-time people during the day. Then the fire chief became full-time, and then consistently moved up our staffing efforts. And so I moved into the fire chief position in December of 2009, I believe.
Okay.
And I was a full-time deputy chief in charge of training for a couple of years prior to that. But I worked as a paramedic teacher for Rockford Memorial Hospital out of Rockford, and I worked for some other departments as a firefighter paramedic. But I was consistently always on Stillman as a firefighter and then an officer, and then worked my way up through the chief spot.
So were you, during that time, were you kind of, before you took on, I think you said a full-time position as a deputy chief of training?
Yep.
And then you stepped into the full-time fire chief role?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So before you got into that full-time aspect, were you kind of doing what I know a lot of people do, is that they're doing some firefighting over here and they're doing a little bit of firefighting over there, and kind of bringing a paycheck together, right? By doing 2, 3, four of these types of different departments that they're trying to cover.
Yeah. At one point, I worked with two volunteer paid on call departments, along with Stillman. One of them actually had full-time firefighter paramedics. Yeah. Went to work with them in another smaller town, and then another smaller town on the other side of Stillman, a couple towns away. While also working night jobs, doing other things. So it was at one time there was 3 fire pagers on my counter and 3 fire portables on my counter, and it depended on what day I woke up, which direction I was going. Yeah. So and then when the full-time spot for the training chief opened up, at the time Stillman only had one full-time spot, and that was the fire chief. And the fire chief at the time was thinking ahead and thinking, we need somebody to oversee training. There's too much to do as the fire chief to handle training as well. And so he opened up the full-time training chief spot, thanks to our board and our fire chief at the time. And then I applied for that position and got it. And I had been preparing myself with, training officer classes, company fire officer at the time, it was fire officer 1, fire officer 2, and moved my way through, because my goal at some point was to be full-time on a fire department. I didn't know at the time it was going to be Stillman. I didn't know that Stillman was going to be my career for the rest of my life, but the doors opened, and it's been a blessing. And you walked through it. Yeah, it's hard to turn down advancement like that, Right. And it's interesting. I think what you point out there is that the fire chief at the time realized that he couldn't keep up with training, and I've said on other episodes where the fire service and training are, do I have to even finish the statement? It's right. Like, it is so important. If you are training your people well, they're going to perform well. Obviously, if you're lacking in the training department, it's going to show. Right. And I've also said too, now you get enough firefighters together and throw enough firefighters at a problem, the problem will eventually go away. Absolutely. Just out of crazy innovation of themselves. But it's much better to have a well-trained firefighter for sure. Yeah. So it's not surprising that the chief at the time had said, well, I got to create a chief of training. Right. He didn't say, hey, I got to have an admin chief, because it's like, well, he's probably pretty much already doing that anyways. Absolutely. So the fact that it was identified for you first to step into the training role, I have a real big passion for training. And one of the things that I was able to do early on in my career is I got involved with a cadre of instructors in Illinois in the suburbs. And that's where I got exposed to these firefighters that were either part-time, or actually some of them were full-time, but they were actually covering 2 and 3 departments together. Absolutely. Because and sometimes a lot of times it was because they were such short-staffed by one department that they were with was doing pretty okay staffed, and then they would go and moonlight at another fire department because that department had almost nobody. Right. And it's like, wow, talk about spread yourself thin. Yeah, that's a tough one. And there's a lot of fire departments out there, and a lot of suburbs that I deal with currently in my position with the Illinois Fire Chiefs is a lot of these fire departments are staffing themselves with part-time firefighters that are full-time firefighters on other departments, whether they're coming out of Chicago or other suburbs. And these guys, they're just using it as a part-time job, but that creates the entire full-time staff of these fire departments. And it's an interesting model. It works really well for people. A lot of times those people don't have longevity with the part-time department that they're doing work for, but sometimes you see these guys that do 15, 20 years, and that's their part-time job that they've had the whole time, and it works well for them. So it's really kind of how you build your department, how you build that culture, whether that's going to work for you or not. I wouldn't suggest it for every department that needs help, but it's like for us at Stillman, for years we never accepted people from out of district. We were going to be the small town department that said, we're going to be staffed by people who live in the district, that pay taxes for our district, and that have that, relationship with the fire district.
You wanted the heart of your community serving your department.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was great. And it worked really, really well. And in our county, I was one of the last departments, I think, that opened up and said, hey, we're going to allow people from out of district to apply for our department and be on the department. It creates some difficulties because when we get a second or third call, they're not coming in on backup calls because, they're 15, 20 miles away.
Right.
But we also hope that if they do hear that we're out on a couple of calls, that they might start heading our direction. If they're not working at their full-time job that day, or if they don't have a full-time job that day, they can come in and help cover the station. Not required. But we realize that we have some really well-trained or really not even well-trained people necessarily at first, but we have some really motivated people. And if they can't become full-time in the city they live in because they haven't made a list or they're not 21, they can't get hired as a full-time firefighter yet, that they come to us and say, hey, I've got the drive. I'm able to do it. You guys provide paid training. I might not stay with you forever, but I'm going to give 100% while I'm here. And we have a young kid right now whose dad retired from Rockford Fire, and he joined our fire department, and he's going to be soon moving to another full-time department. But he's put in several months with Stillman and just been a hard worker. And if anything, while he's there, he's showing some of the other younger people, this is good work ethic. This is a good opportunity for you to get your feet wet in the fire service. And if you choose to move on, you move on. And we are also a department that has put on so many people that have moved on to Rockford Fire Department and, big city departments, have gone and become chiefs. Green Bay Metro, Matt Knott started with Stillman Fire Department. Our board president, Mark Wortman, who's been on this show, started at Stillman as a volunteer. So many people that I can look at and say, hey, your roots were at Stillman Valley and Stillman Fire Department. Look where you came from.
Yep.
For me, it's not a detriment when we lose those people. I want to see good people put into the United States Fire Service, State of Illinois Fire Service. If they start with us, that's a bonus for me.
Man, you hit the nail on the head for me because this show and the brand of Original Firefighter, it is for the American Fire Service. We are very loud and proud about that. And trust me, I'm over here tooting our own horn a little bit because when I look at what you just said, that you're very proud of where you're from and where you started from, and did you know or not know that you were going to stay there your entire career?
Right.
We're all kind of getting into the fire service with the unknown. Mm-hmm. You just have a feeling like this is a good fit for me. When I was, we have very similar stories. I also started out in small rural town, Albany, Wisconsin, and I've mentioned this before where. I was in high school as well. It's almost it's very cool. Almost same for same. Where I just thought like, wow, this would be a great thing for me to just try out.
Right.
And before you know it, you're just hooked.
Absolutely.
You're and now you're finding you're like looking. I'm really dating myself here. Where I'm like, I had this pager, and I'm looking at the pager going, just go off, will you please?
Yeah.
So I can ditch school here.
Yeah.
But they did, and that's the small town charm.
Right.
That you get to be involved in some of these things that you wouldn't have as much of a chance in big metro city department, or city settings. Where, they're already functioning a full-time department. They don't need your 17-year-old to volunteer.
Right.
So you find those opportunities out there in our rural country, if you will, in a lot of ways. So I think that's one of the things that I get back to my roots by thinking about. It does begin in so many ways, as it did for myself, it did for you. And I can only imagine that, listeners and viewers that are tuned in, and if you're a firefighter, there's a lot of you out there that began as volunteers yourself. Maybe you still are today.
Right.
And that's great. I mean, we all know that the numbers are down everywhere. I mean, they're down in volunteerism.
Right.
They're down in the recruitment to get people to take the test. And we can maybe touch on that here in a bit.
Absolutely.
But so I appreciate you kind of just giving us a little bit of your background. Did you have a department that you were thinking when you were younger? Did you think like, okay, I would really like to get on to fill in the blank?
Around us, a lot of people, Rockford's the closest metropolitan department that we could have got on. And I knew a lot of people on Rockford Fire. I had neighbors growing up that were on Rockford Fire. And so you'd think that I was gonna do that. I did test once, but I really didn't think this is where I was going to end up. Honestly, I thought I was going to end up in, doing some other odd job, and that the fire service was going to continue at Stillman Fire Protection District, and I was just going to do this as a volunteer the rest of my life and still love it.
Sure.
And I never ever imagined, I still don't imagine to this day, even, being 29 years into it, I don't see what the end looks like yet, which is an interesting concept as well. But I just didn't know where I was going to end up. Was it going to be full-time fire? When the opportunity for the full-time deputy chief popped up, I was on a list for another fire department in the area. And I just kind of thought I was going to end up there. And so when this position popped up, I'd had the background, I had the education, the training, and the knowledge to do the job. And I thought, I wonder how long this is going to last.
Right.
And then when I jumped into that, it was great. I loved it. It was probably the best job I had in the fire service was training. The training chief was great. But when the fire chief job presented itself, I was 30 years old. I had only been full-time in the fire service for 2 years. I had been on since I was 16 as a cadet. But it was really my whole personality revolved around fire department. Everybody knew it. You have those people, and most people in the fire service, their personality revolves around it. But when I saw that position present itself, I had to do a lot of talking with family members and so forth, and talk to the firefighters and the staff and say, do you think this is something that I should do? And it was really what I got was, well, yeah, obviously this is the position that you're going to take. And so it wasn't, you should really think about it. I did have one person say, hey, a fire chief, local fire chief say, hey, you're pretty young. You don't necessarily want to get involved into a chief spot. 30
is young.
Ridiculous.
I'm sure you didn't have to be told that. I mean, it's young.
Well, it's funny because the 30-year-olds that are on the fire department now, I look at and go, oh my gosh.
We had people that got hired at 30.
Yeah, so do we. Still. Yeah. So, and I look and go, man, I was your age when I took the fire chief spot. It blows my mind. I look at all the things that I didn't know then about being fire chief. And I was really good at reaching out to my peers, and I had the Illinois fire chiefs that I was a part of, that I reached out to. I had great mentors and peers. But I think about the things that I don't know now, even 15 years into being the fire chief. I didn't know what I didn't know then. I don't know what I don't know now. I'm interested to see what I'm going to know 5 years from now. And so I think that's everywhere.
If you wouldn't mind, like give an example of that. Like when you got you get the job at 30 years old, and real quick, what were maybe a couple of the credentials that rose to the top that said, yeah, at 30 years old, he should be the fire chief?
I think the big part was the board of trustees knew that training was the basis of being a solid paid on call or volunteer firefighter.
Okay.
And so they looked at
that dedication to training and service was sort of like the first nugget,
right?
To lead with.
Yeah, and it was more of the people, the backgrounds of people, you know where people need to be. You're creating plans to take firefighter Smith from where he's at to become an officer with Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, whatever training plan people had. And so it was more of a familiarity with the community, a huge community advocate, and then the people that were on the fire department. And it was, I had already done paramedic. We had just several years earlier transformed into a paramedic level, ALS level department, and I was teaching EMS at the time. So there was a lot of things there, but really on the back end of it, and I still tell people this today. I was sitting in my office yesterday, got a phone call about a deposition that I had done on an incident that we had, and there was someone in my office having a conversation with me, and they said, how'd you learn about depositions? Like, I had no idea about depositions until I became fire chief. And then I got a phone call one day. It said, Chief Hoefle, we need you for this deposition. First, you're going to need to explain to me what a deposition is, and then we can move forward. So it's the things that you learn that you don't know anything about. And now when I get a subpoena or a phone call, and you get a subpoena for records, you have to know the process, how to do it, and so forth. I was like, don't people just call and ask you for stuff? No, you got to get a subpoena, and they go through the process. But when you're a young firefighter, or you're a young fire officer, they teach you how to put out fires. We don't even do a great job in the fire service about teaching leaders how to deal with people. We teach you how to deal with fires, and we teach you how to solve problems. We don't necessarily do a great job at teaching our young leaders how to deal with problems in the firehouse. And I think, the fire service comes with its level of drama at different departments. Everybody's got it, but 99% of it's people related, not incident related. And so I think the fire service needs to work on that significantly. And I think that's what, when I became fire chief, one of my goals was, hey, we need to really put our time into the people. And if they're happy, and if their needs are being met, then they're going to do the training, and then they're going to do the things that we need them to do. And everybody still has, everybody's got their problems, and everything's a work in progress. But if you continuously focus on that, you're going to have a better run department.
So let's maybe explore that a little bit about, leaders in the fire service, or really developing leaders.
Right.
Some people are naturally born leaders. We know that.
Right.
And some take time to be tailored. But in the fire service, and I hear this, I'm a proponent of it as well. So I just want to be clear, that, I do feel that the fire service is a different nut to crack, rather than, for example, what you might find in cubicle industries. Do you follow that?
Agreed. Yeah.
So if you're in that kind of an environment, where it's constantly 72 degrees and lights are always on and everything, and the pot of coffee is fresh, everything's thumbs up, right? Mm-hmm. And that is nearly the opposite of the fire service. And we were very clear on the show that the fire service represents EMS, fire-based EMS, hospital-based EMS, anybody on the front line. You're doing a particularly different type of service out there. Would you not agree?
I would agree with you.
Yeah. So how do we work that part of this into the conversation about building good leaders, working with people and their particular issues, problems, the drama that comes into the firehouse, and managing people, and doing it in a productive leadership sort of way?
Right.
What are your takes on that right now?
I think it all comes back to planning, right? So if you don't have leadership that's committed to it, you can have leaders all day long say, hey, we're putting our people first. We see that all the time. Mm-hmm. But when it gets down to brass tacks, they don't put their people first. And that's not everywhere. That's some places. But when we have departments that have serious issues, we can usually track it back to the top. Obviously, anything that's bad that happens at our department, I'm responsible for. Anything that's good that happens, the people that serve this district, they're responsible for that. Mm-hmm. Leadership, and I'm not an expert. This is just my experience, is that if we make it a priority, if we make it part of a strategic plan, if we're talking about it and it's constantly on the forefront of what the leadership. And leadership goes to your board members, goes to your fire chief, goes to your officers, even your senior members. If it's on the forefront of their minds and it's talked about, then it's going to be a priority for the district. Mm-hmm. If we talk about it once every 3 years during a strategic planning meeting, or every year, however often you revisit that, and we talk about it and say, yep, we're going to put our people first, and we're going to make sure that people have good leadership training, and then we never look at it again, we're going to get exactly the product that we put out there.
Well, I think that's what I'm steering us towards a little bit, is that we keep saying that,
right?
And you're going to hear coming through is that I would actually argue that you are an expert. I'm not here to, give myself a pat on the back necessarily, but at some point, when do we become experts? We've been in the fire service for a long time now. I mean, collectively, you and I joined up together. We're about 60 years of fire service experience sitting in this room right now.
That's wild. Okay,
so what I'm driving at is, if you've had any level of success, which you obviously have. I mean, in fact, your position at the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association is actually the board president, right?
Correct.
So, and when did you obtain that?
October, I became the president of the Illinois Fire Chiefs.
This last year, 2024?
Yep.
Yeah. So, here is a great example of a person who has lived his entire life living and breathing the fire service, representing the hometown community that you love and grew up in. And now you've been the fire chief for 15 years, and now the Illinois Fire Chief Association president. I mean, you've got some expertise here. And we keep hearing this over and over that, we put people first. We put the people first. We put the people first. Do the people feel that? Are they actually feeling that in the fire service? There's a lot out there that we get that come back, and they'll say something on the show that we can kind of read between the lines and say, man, these people are not happy.
Right.
They are really unhappy with the way that the fire service has been going lately. And that could be a number of things. I've got some low-hanging fruit I can pick real quick, and I can get to that here in a minute. And Trump, currently in current times, President Trump is making it very clear that he wants some things to change in a lot of different industries. And I think that there is going to be a trickle effect that will touch the fire service as well. When do we know that we've landed on the right leadership, mentorship, teachings? When do we know that we're on the right track to prepare for the next person that's going to step up into the lieutenant, captain, chief role? You can't just say it by going, we believe that we put our people first.
Right.
There, now go be a leader. How are we measuring and quantifying that we are putting our people first?
Right.
That's the question that I want to keep coming back to. In organizations like the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, what's their answer to that? How are we quantifying and that we are putting our people first? The firefighters.
Right. So the way I look at it is, that's a really tough ask,
sure.
right? Finding out how do you look at numbers, right? How do you look at the data that says we're doing that? And I think that the short answer is I don't know, right? So
I wasn't trying to stump you,
right? No, but I like that. I like being stumped. But I really think when we look at things like assessment centers, if I'm speaking on behalf of the Illinois Fire Chiefs, if we look at assessment centers and we look at how many people are wanting to be leaders, right? If you have departments that they're testing for lieutenant positions, and 15 years ago they had a large metropolitan department, they had 40 people test for lieutenant, and now they have 6. There's something wrong. People should want to, on a normal basis, people should want to move through the hierarchy of their department. They should want to obtain a position where they can do good for their department. And when we see people stop wanting to be in leadership positions, it's for a couple of different reasons. They don't want to be in a leadership position because they've seen what the leaders of their organization have done, and they don't want to be tied up with that. Some places it's a money thing. We see people all the time that they're testing for lieutenant, they're testing higher because, it's going to help me with my pension. And I get that. I mean, I don't live that world in the fire protection district world, at least in Stillman. But I do see that all over the state that, I've talked to people on a regular basis that, this is going to bump my pension. I'm going to test for a battalion chief spot because, for the next couple of years, that's going to help my pension. And that's just the way that the fire service works. And I get that. But people
money is a fair motivator.
Absolutely.
It's fine. We bargain for it.
Right.
We desire it. It typically, in historically speaking, that it's a short-term fix,
right,
to most people's issues and problems. But I think that you're bringing up something that's interesting, is that what you're pointing out is that you see the problem first.
Right.
The problem first is, why are we not getting as many applicants for, again, fill in the blank,
Yep,
entry level, the next promotional test? why are we not getting the numbers that we were once seeing before?
Right.
And I'm just curious about like what's your take on that in 2025? You're now the new president of the Illinois Fire Chiefs. So does the association look at that as a concern in the state of Illinois?
Oh, absolutely. So we've got committees and partners that are working with committees that are, every group has their own, well, how do we fix it? Throw in any dilemma the fire service is having.
Right.
The Illinois Fire Chiefs, the Illinois Association of Fire Protection Districts, MABUS, Metropolitan Fire Chiefs, they're all doing the same thing. And they go, hey, how do we fix recruitment and retention for firefighters? How do we fix the officer issues that we have? How do we fix the chief issues we have? Not having huge numbers of interim chiefs that want to take over, et cetera. And so everybody's working on their own thing, and they're coming up with different answers. What would be nice is to get some of these people on the same page, which we're working towards, getting people on the same page and say, what are your findings? What is this group's findings? And what I think I found out by talking to people all over the state is your cultural dynamics are really playing a factor there, because for Stillman Fire, it's way different than Rockford Fire. Why aren't people testing for Rockford Fire? I'm not sure. It's Stillman Fire when you put an application in and someone says, well, how much do I get paid? Well, you get paid a few dollars for the calls you go on, but other than that, you don't get anything. And sometimes we have people go, thanks, that's not going to be for me. But for the most part, we tell them what they're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
You're going to get free training. You're going to get good education. You're going to get the camaraderie. You're going to get you're helping out a community. You're doing all this stuff.
Right.
There's different reasons that people will test for that than they'll test for Rockford Fire or Chicago Fire or whatnot. But we're seeing, in the suburbs, we're seeing a lot of these younger firefighters that are working for a fire department, XYZ fire department, and the neighboring town offers this 25-year-old kid an extra $1,000 a year salary. So he puts his notice in here and he goes over to this department because it's an extra $1,000 a year. And then he gets an extra $2,000 a year 3 years later from another neighboring department. I'm leaving these guys and I'm going over there. 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing. People stayed with the department they were at and they retired.
Absolutely.
And they retired not when they hit their 20 years. They retired when they physically couldn't do it anymore. Not, hey, I hit my 20 and I'm getting the heck out. Not that that's a bad thing, because that is
I would argue that it is a bad thing. I would. I have to take a couple stands and say, I think that you're hitting on something that is very important. I hope that there are people that tune in here, because you're hitting on the cultural difference of, say, 10 years ago, and you can go back almost like in 10-year increments, basically, because there was a point in time. And we had, we've had individuals that on the show that have said, I would have done this for free.
Yeah.
Like the fire service was that meaningful to them.
Absolutely.
At that time, I was one of those people. I believed at the young age that I was at. I think at 16, I started thinking about the fire service. At 17, I was in the fire service at a small degree. And here I am, 51 years old, and I'm still talking about the fire service. And I'm trying to figure out, like, what has happened to the fire service. Now, there's been some great things. I mean, it's funny how we want to protect it too. We want to talk about the negative, but we want to protect it.
Right.
But at some point, we need to pause on the protection part of it and call a few things out.
Right.
I think we're there. I think in 25 years into the 21st century, we have to start, people who are experts, who are sitting in certain positions, have to start looking at this and saying, if you look at the comments and the messages that come into shows like this, and that so many of them they're pretty negative. Right. And I can already hear it. I can hear well, if you don't like it, get the fuck out.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I get your point. And I've even used that to a degree in myself when I was, as a chief officer, and looking at certain people going, look, you don't like what's going on. I got a form for you to fill out. Right. It says I resign and you can move on.
Right.
But the fire service today is hurting. The numbers are way down. And something is amiss. I think to a degree that we're poisoning the blood a little bit ourselves. I can show you the evidence of people going, well, I signed up to be a firefighter, but all I do is I ride the ambulance.
Right.
And that, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, how do we turn that ship?
Right.
And get back to some semblance of the old fire service with a better attitude,
right.
The better attitude of today. I don't know.
Yeah. And so many things crossed my mind when you were saying that, but I think there's a couple things that I thought about while you were saying that. One is expectations. I think that just like you said, we look at some of these firefighters and say, hey, if you don't like it, get out. I also think on the other side of things, that firefighters are being told, this is what you're going to get out of the fire service. This, and this. And then they don't get what they're looking for out of the fire service. They need to be able, as firefighters, be able to go back to administration, their officers, whoever oversees them, and say, hey, this is the expectation you laid out. This is not what we're getting. Maybe the way you'll get people in the door is by giving them accurate expectations. This is what you're going to get from us. This is what we expect from you. So there needs to be
expectations.
There needs to be accurate expectation. And then there needs to be transparency as well. When firefighters have questions and I came from, 1996, not that long ago, and I was told, keep your eyes and ears open, your mouth shut.
Yeah,
and I get that. There's a point there, and we could argue that back and forth. But when young firefighters come in and go, I didn't know why we do this, I'd love to tell them. And sometimes I say, hey, I will explain that to you, or someone will explain that to you. Now is not the time, but we will explain that to you here shortly. Let's get back to you. I also, though, have had firefighters come in and say, hey, this is the way I think things should be done. Thanks for your input. That's not the way we're going to do things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons why, and I could explain them till I'm blue in the face. But right now, what you need to know is this is why we're doing it. Not just because it's the way we've always done it, but there's genuine reasons why we do things the way we do. And if you can't articulate those reasons, this is why we do things, not everything has to go to that firefighter. But in your own head, if you can't articulate it to yourself why we're doing things the way we're doing, man, we should look at it.
I kind of chuckle when I hear the phrase, it's the way that we've always done it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I got to push on that one because it's not because of what you said. It's like, I agree with you because I find that to be such a stupid scapegoat anymore. First of all, nobody's diving their rig anymore.
Right.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about? Dive the rig.
Exactly.
All right. Nobody is out there. Heck, we're barely not even, I just said heck. Heck.
Heck.
Oh, heck. Oh, shucks.
I didn't know that was coming out.
But it's like, we're not even building firehouses anymore that have a brass pole in it,
right?
For fear that someone's going to slip and fall down the hole and twist an ankle or something like that. Everything's got to be one level and very safe, and everyone's in their little bunk now, and we can't be disturbed by some outside noise. And I say that with some tongue in cheek because we do understand that there are things that we should be doing. And then again, this is the evolution of the fire service is, if we can make life better for you inside the firehouse, let's do that.
Right.
That is putting our people first.
Right, absolutely.
That is a great way of talking about we put our people first by taking care of their, as much as we possibly can, their mental health, giving them as much rest as they possibly can.
Right.
And doing it in a way where making them feel like it's a priority and not that they had to beg for it.
Right.
Because I think that's what gets under the individual skin, the firefighters, the paramedics, the police officers. Stop making them feel like they have to beg for their benefits of the job.
Right.
The benefits of the job sometimes are, I get to take a piss break and have a decent meal and maybe get, 45 minutes of rest time, downtime. Because I know people literally that are running their wheels off.
Right.
And they're, inside their themselves, they feel like their head's going to explode, and they're doing that day in and day out and day in and day out. And then we wonder why they're running up against a wall. And then they're running out of energy there.
And then you have certain administrations, that look at it and go, well, you signed up for this. Just deal with it. This is the way we've done it.
Right, exactly.
And that's unfortunate because if you have a collective and you have a bunch of people coming to you and saying, hey, something's got to change. This isn't healthy. This isn't healthy mentally for us. This isn't healthy physically for us. This isn't good for our community. At the end of the day, what are we doing for our community, the people that we're serving? If you're too exhausted to throw a ladder because you've been on 12 calls and you're the person expected to do everything, and you get a call right before shift's out, and you can't physically do the job, something has to change. So, it's important for people to talk. It's important for people to come together and say, hey, let's bring these concerns, even as minimal as they are. If I'm thinking about it, somebody else is thinking about it. How can we fix it? And if administration can really look at the staff and the firefighters and the officers and go, this is what's best for our community, then this is why we're going to continue to do it. But the other thing is you have to be able to come to an argument with a solution instead of just having a bitch, right? So people in leadership positions need to be able to do that too. Whether you're a quote barn boss, you're a lieutenant, or the senior guy, or whatever you're going to call it, you need to be able to say, hey, I understand your concerns, but what would make it better? And if they throw off hey, pay us an extra, $100,000 a piece a year, obviously we can't do that. What else could you bring to the table that we could make it better?
Well, so, excuse me, still getting over a little bit of that Midwest cold
that
and
ick that's going around.
Yeah, the ick, and given the fact that we haven't had, we haven't had any winter. It's crazy.
Nothing.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
But to go back to what you just said about, do we pay them on, you kind of threw out 100,000, which is just, look, I know that's not meant exactly what you meant, but I have said this before is if it's not that, okay, so this just to stay in the context of the conversation, what we're driving at here is that we love the fire service, and many, many people do. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is we want to continue to cultivate a mindset that there's a reason to do this as a career,
right?
A lifelong career.
Yeah,
it's extremely rewarding. And in fact, the real message that we should be driving out there is you're going to get way more out of this than a paycheck. Mm-hmm. That right there, I think, has been a bit lost in translation.
Right.
Is what you're going to get out of a career in the fire service, you're going to get far more than just a paycheck. Now, that being said, to be transparent, the fire service, the EMS part of it, the technical rescue, the hazmats, the diving in the water type stuff, all of this combined, plus community risk reduction, fire prevention, in-home care is beginning, to take shape and form.
All the things.
And these are all being delivered by fire departments,
right?
Mostly by and large fire departments. That becomes a pretty big bureaucratic department.
Absolutely.
When you start adding in all of those things. And I think what I see is that the balance on the seesaw is we keep adding. Here's a little bit more, and here's a little bit more, and the seesaw is getting like this, and the firefighters are sitting up here going, "Hey, we're about to fall off this thing. It's too much."
Absolutely.
It's either it's too much on one end, or if you want to do all that, then the staffing's got to be there to support all of these things, all of these activities. Right. And the number one thing, as far as I remember, is that we were supposed to be answering the call.
Right.
Answer the call, right? The call goes out, we go out, and we
that's
get
our
it.
Job.
That's our job. Get in the thing, get in the engine,
whatever
get
needs
in the
to
ladder,
get there.
Get in the rescue, do this thing, and get out there and do it. This episode of the original Firefighter Podcast is sponsored by Castle Contracting. Castle Contracting offers commercial and residential restoration, leading the industry in roofing, residential siding, gutters and downspouts, egress window installation, storm damage assessment and repair, and solar energy, saving you money and time. If you want to be treated like royalty, contact Castle Contracting to schedule a free inspection. Call them at 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. That's 877-512-4207, or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. Serving Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, Castle Contracting has you covered. Your home is your castle. Call Castle Contracting today. What is the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, for example? What are some of their initiatives to tackle any of that we just kind of just threw out there? Anything come to mind?
So really the Illinois Fire Chiefs supports those chief officers when they have those questions. And a lot of it is whether it be consulting with a fire chief that's dealing with the same things you're dealing with. We get involved with a lot of legal discussions, but at the end of the day, the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association says you need to talk to your legal department. We're not going to speak for those things. A lot of our job is just talking to fire chiefs that just at the end of the day go, I just don't know what to do about X situation. We're going to help you figure that out.
What comes up the most? Would you say?
A lot of times it's like assessment centers, or it's staffing on the full-time side. On the paid on call and volunteer side, it's a fire chief that doesn't necessarily know what his job is, her job is, or I don't know how to deal with my board of trustees. There's a conflict, or I'm not exactly sure how to approach them about this, or I'm not sure how to approach our community about asking for more money. Mm-hmm. Those are the types of things we say we swoop in and we'll give you a hand and help out. They help with the 30-year-old fire chief that comes in and says, I don't necessarily know how to fire chief. I know how to people. I know how to put out fires. I know how to take care of sick people. Those are where they're the superheroes as far as I'm concerned, because the back end stuff is so much more important sometimes. If you have a good running department, but your leadership is faltering, you can run that fire department for a while, but eventually things are going to catch up. So, and I think that's the bonus of the Illinois Fire Chiefs, aside from looking at legislation constantly, and handling those type of things. We have so many partners and so many committees. There's always something that we're working on in the fire service, which is great.
Mm-hmm. So you're, again, what you basically kind of offered there, what I'm taking from that is you are helping in the things that we're discussing here on the show is we're talking about things like, staffing levels and how to approach just something you pointed out there is like, how do you approach your boards or your municipalities to ask for more money? And I guess what are some tips that come to mind when someone says that, like, hey, help me figure out how to go and ask for the money that I need?
Right. So there's a lot of things. And then I'll give you, for instance, for Stillman Fire. We pay a contract agency for our staffing. It's the way it works out best for our district right now. And so those full-time employees wear a Stillman Fire uniform. They drive our Stillman Fire vehicles. They're essentially our employees. They're getting their paycheck from a contract. Whether you like that or you don't like that, that's the way Stillman Fire does it. We pay them a certain amount, and that is the max we can ask for the community right now. We got a referendum in order to get staffing a few years ago, and we see all these agencies around us that are bumping their pay up. I would have to go back to our community and say, hey, we want to give everybody a raise. So we need to ask more for more tax dollars. Mm-hmm. Where a municipality can say, hey, we're going to buy less dump trucks next year, and we're going to give our firefighters a raise. For me, I have to go back to that tax person and say, the people paying taxes, and say, I'm going to put a bigger burden on you, because obviously these guys need to get more money. Not, hey, we need nicer fire trucks. Not, we need new building. Hey, we need this. We got to pay people more. And so there's a struggle there. And so having people that have done that before, having people that have approached your community, approached communities like ours, calling the Illinois Fire Chiefs and saying, hey, we need help with this. I think we're pretty good at it. I don't know that I'd need to call as the president, call somebody, but I still use so many people with the Illinois Fire Chiefs as mentors, even people that left Stillman Fire that have been leadership roles above me in the fire service. I still call to this day and say, hey, what would you do with this? And I think that goes back to being okay asking for help when you don't understand something. And I think that's huge in the fire service too. And that's another thing that we let people in the Illinois fire service know through the Illinois Fire Chiefs is you're not going to have all the answers. There's going to be things that you scratch your head with. You might be an expert in, these categories, but you're still going to have days where you go, I just don't know what to do. There's somebody that's been there. So call and ask. that's just a benefit. It works out great for us.
What, so for example, you just said that, you might be asking taxpayers for basically a referendum to raise money, to raise taxes, to do any number of things.
Right.
And let's just stick with, what we've been kind of discussing is whether it be that we want to add staffing or we want to pay them more. What are the behind the scenes? What's the behind the scenes work that people aren't actually seeing that have to go on, whether it be from the fire chief's role, or let's take the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association and say, if a municipality is trying to say they're going to try to ask the taxpayer to pay more, they don't like doing that. Right. So,
correct.
Right. So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword, is it not?
It is. I'll tell you what. Every single time I've consulted with a fire chief, be it municipal, be it volunteer, paid on call, and I've done quite a bit of that over the past few years. Every single time I resort back to asking your community anything, asking your city, city managers anything, asking your mayor for anything, goes back to how do your people treat the stakeholders? How do your people treat Mrs. Smith on an ambulance call? How do they drive when they're, going through an intersection? Do they blow through stop signs? Do they blow through stoplights? When people close their eyes and they think about XYZ fire department, is it a positive thought? Is it a negative thought? If every interaction our people in Stillman Valley have with our firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics is a positive one, then when it comes time every 7 years to go, hey, we're going to need a little bit extra help because we're a taxing body, people go, okay. But if they saw you one time blow through a stop sign and give somebody the finger because you thought you were cut off and it was a big shiny fire truck that says Stillman Fire, then one, that's going to spread. Everybody's going to hear about it. But two, that person's going to be a big no. And especially in a world with social media. Yeah. Man,
you don't get away with anything.
One thing can destroy. You have one firefighter when you're going for a referendum. You have one firefighter that gets on and argues with a community member, argues on social media, can tank your entire ask of your community because they're not going to see all the good the fire department does because 90% of those people have never dealt with your fire department.
Yeah.
But what they see is firefighter, Smith screaming at some old lady on Facebook because she doesn't have the dollars. I'll tell you, when we did our last referendum, I had a lady call me. She said she was on a fixed income, said, I don't have any money. I can't support your referendum. And some fire chiefs' responses would have been, we have to have this money. You need to figure it out. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do this. Instead, my response was, then you should absolutely vote no. If you can't afford it, you should vote no. I will tell you there's a bigger ask on the fire department every single year. There's these things that are going to happen if it doesn't pass. But if you can't afford it, then that's your right. I mean, you have the right to vote no. Do I want your vote? Yes, absolutely. But too many times that's that strong arm of we have to do it this way. We have to do it this way. If our community in Stillman would have said, we don't want to support that, would we have folded up? Nope. We're the fire service. We'd have had to figure it out. And we would have figured it out. They would have had less service in our community. We would not have had the full-time staffing. We would have not have been as efficient and proficient as we are now. But we'd have kept going because that's what we have to do in the fire service.
Well, I think that you are doing a great job of articulating the need for the relationship to be there between the fire department and the tax base.
Right.
The customer, we use that term quite a bit. Hey, they're the customer. Hey, they're and that's great. That's fine. When I was a district chief, I would tell the people that reported to me and say, you don't get to have open court out in the street. It's not your job.
Right.
It's not. It's literally not your job. You can't do it. Now, let me make sure that I'm clear about this. I never allowed anybody to get a browbeaten. You don't get to just cock off and be nasty. Right. Or have some type of a battery of any sort.
Right.
I don't care if you spit on them. We're not doing that.
Right.
But that all being said, it's just not the place. And, out on the call, and you're arguing one way or another. Is this a reason to call 911? That's usually the big one.
Yeah.
Is this the reason? No, it probably isn't. First of all, you already know the answer.
Exactly.
You're being argumentative.
Yeah. You're causing problems. You're not solving anything at all.
You know the answer.
Correct.
The thing that I drive towards still in the voice that I have in the fire service is, if it's not their fight to have out in the street,
right,
it's somebody's fight to have, though. And that is something that is very strong to me personally. And I just am wondering how you feel about that in the chief's position that you have, where you're the ultimate fighter for your people. And if you're individuals who, you may not have the same, type of experiences that maybe, I have, and we can understand where we're both coming from. Exactly. Is that if they're not the ones to have the fight, does it fall back right on you?
Yeah, and I think it does. And I think that comes with all problems in the fire service, is if we're dictating what our people are allowed to do, and we're dictating which instances they're allowed to be involved in, we can tell them all day long, this is not your issue. You don't get to decide.
Right.
I can decide, or I can make a decision that we're not going to do anything about this and it's going to stay this way, but that is not in your lane.
Yeah.
The countless overdoses we go to, or calls that people, think, I don't want to say they think they're above, but, explaining to an overdose patient, you shouldn't have done this.
It's pretty futile, isn't it?
I doubt that's going to change their mind from doing it again. Our job is to be there, is to be an advocate for that patient every single time they call. Mm-hmm. Our job is not to berate them and explain to them that, their poor life choices and how we think they're, making these poor life choices. Be somebody to be there with them, that positive influence they need for the 20 minutes we're with them. And then be done with that, until the next time you see them, because you're going to see them again. And so that is something that I try to portray with our people and people I come in contact with. Our attitude definitely, our attitude and our personal culture definitely rubs off on people. And if I'm not part of the solution, then I'm part of the problem. And so back to the, having the fight for our people. To me, in our firehouse, it goes back to what your mission is. When I got hired as a fire chief, I told the board, I said, I'm never going to do anything that's going to look bad on the front page of a newspaper. And I will be your fire chief, and I will be there as the liaison for the firefighters and the board of trustees, or the elected officials. But I also have to remember that I came from being a firefighter and going to these calls and being a paramedic on the ambulance and knowing what we were fighting for then. And so when we need something, it's my job as the fire chief to say, one, is this legitimately a need? Is it a need, or is it somebody looking for a reason to be heard? And they have that, right? Everybody's got the right. They've got the right to be heard. We've all got those people that want to be heard every day, all the time. But for specific issues, be heard. And then as the administration, as an officer, as the fire chief, acknowledge you hear what they're saying. Because sometimes they get this yapping. I shouldn't say yapping. That's they get to discussing.
We get your point.
They're yapping. Sometimes they just want to. They want to hear themselves, but sometimes we need to be able to feed through the bullshit and go, what's the real issue here that you're having? And I think that's the key to being a good leader. Is if you're a good leader, you should be able to pick that out instead of just going, oh, that's just John complaining all the time. Well, maybe that's his attitude. If John
complains all the time, then he's living up to his name, right?
Right, exactly. Right. So we should be able to dig through that and say there's some deeper seated issues here. Maybe we should deal with it, because we've had, I don't care who you are, if you've been in the fire service for a long time, you've had a person that just irritates everybody. Are they a good person? Absolutely a good person. Would they do anything for anybody? Absolutely. But they're just that person that when they walk into a room, people are like, oh, maybe I should find something to do.
Yeah, I got to go wash the fire truck.
Right. They're good people. They have good intentions. And sometimes we say you're a good person with good intentions, but the way you present is probably the wrong way. Right. So there might be some issues you deal with there where they might have great ideas, but their presentation is awful. So what do you do for that person? What do you do for that group of people in the fire service? And I think that goes back to being able to read your people and knowing what's best for each individual instead of, a blanket thing that works for everybody.
I think that's something that if we're trying to peel the onion back a bit here, which we tend to do on the show, is we're trying to kind of expose the underlying issues to a greater degree. We do a lot of mental health conversation. We'll get to that here. I have a question for you here in a minute, but to discuss the irritation, if you will, the years before, if we talk about, we referenced 1996.
Yep.
Okay. Back then and before then, the adage in the firehouse and the fire service was shut up and put up and go away kind of thing. It was that way. Yeah. And some people can argue that, well, we've moved too far from that. I mean, it's an argument.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that I agree with that.
Right.
What I think that we have evolved and can evolve even more so is that actually, I think, is making a bigger problem. If that's your tactic of how to handle a situation, that you're creating a bigger problem.
Right.
You're not addressing anything. In most cases, you're probably creating a shunning moment where this individual does become alienated. That usually doesn't work out very well.
Right.
In lots of different ways. Especially given the fact that if you allow certain people, companies and whatnot to be able to be their own dictatorship and say, you're off the island and only we get to be on the island.
Right.
That is, it's a little bit of a bridge too far in today's world.
Exactly.
You're taking far much more authority than you think that you have in your hands, and you're making decisions about another individual that they are on the department.
Right.
Okay. There is something there that you don't get to just discard anything that you want to discard because it doesn't fit your, I don't know, it doesn't fit your narrative. Yeah. It doesn't fit your coolness. Okay. Now, that being said, it does go back to the other individual, though, and some personal responsibility and accountability and understanding that, they themselves knowing the disruptor that they are.
Right.
And that's a really difficult thing. It's almost easier to tell the group to say, hey, knock it off. Right. We can't have the 3, the 4, the 5 of you doing what you're doing, to this particular person. That's just it's not acceptable. It violates a lot of policies, maybe. Not sure, but maybe it could. But to the individual, that is the difficult conversation.
It's a very difficult conversation because then you're dealing with their personal being, right? You're telling them something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part. One of my biggest flaws in the fire service being, and I don't know if I attribute it to age or the way I was raised, but I was always had the inability to have uncomfortable conversations with people. And when
you had that ability,
I was unable to have uncomfortable conversations.
Okay, gotcha,
it was really, it was probably my worst attribute as a fire chief.
Sure.
I couldn't go to somebody and say, "Hey, what you're doing is damaging, and we need to fix that." I would make light of it. I would joke about it and hope they would get the point, but I was never able to sit them down and go, "Hey, knock this shit off."
Right.
Like this is hurting the operation or whatever. It was a really hard thing for me to learn. And I think it's a really hard thing for some leaders, depending on what organization they're in. And it's tough. My problem in my world is if I sit down Firefighter Smith and say, you're being a jackwagon, you need to knock this off. Stillman Fire could have invested $10,000 of training into that person and 10 years of of time and effort, and they can go, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And now I'm down a paramedic, firefighter, or officer or something like that, and it's because their feelings got hurt. So it's tough in my world and in the world of 75% of the state to have a conversation with someone and tell them that they're the problem. Because if they feel like, you go back to, I hate to do this, but you go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and people need to feel wanted and appreciated.
Oh yeah.
And in the fire service, when you
self-actualization is a big deal.
Huge. And if somebody feels like they're not part of the team, if somebody feels like, this isn't for them, when they're getting a paycheck, they might go, well, I guess I'm not part of the team. I'm just going to live a rotten day every day I come to work, but I'll still be here. In my world, I'm not part of the team means there's no reason for me to show up when the pager goes off. Yeah. Why would I go to a place where people don't appreciate me? And that was my fear going into that as a paid on call fire chief. That's really tough, especially in the world. I talk to fire departments across the state where they have 4 or 5 firefighters on their roster. None of them have certifications. They're working towards whatever. Maybe they don't subscribe to the certification process, but that's their roster. And if they upset somebody, now they don't have somebody to come to calls during the week or at night. And I genuinely feel for those departments. I'm very happy we're not one of those departments, but it is
it's a real jam. It's a jam. And, again, this goes back, and we kind of keep coming back to the fact that there is such a problem out there with recruitment and then and then retention, right? The retention part of that. And I mean, it's going to get crazy when we start to have to become pretty creative on how we're going to keep people. And again, that goes back to getting I don't even know that it's fair to say that we need to turn back to it, because maybe it's always been there, right? Mm-hmm. The whole mission of the fire service is to give more than you expect. Less. Right. Expect less, give more of yourself, right? Okay. And that's great, right? But then at the same time, how do we square that? We keep coming back to how does an individual give more of themselves when they're already giving like crazy amount of energy output to answer, 3% more, at 3% more of the call volume every single year. We keep piling it on. We keep putting it on, and we expect, well, just do a little bit more. We're gonna, and then we're gonna pay you. We'll pay you a little bit, but
or maybe not.
And then on top of that, then you have to tell an individual that you're really screwing up,
right?
And so now you hamstring the leadership, right? The fire chief, maybe the board of trustees, whatever you want to say, and go. You can't drop the hammer. I mean, we should.
Right.
But if you do, what are we going to do? Cut bait?
Yeah, and now we tell people that we have staffing issues, but we're dropping people because we didn't like their attitude.
Right.
Right? That's a real life thing that people don't think about, because some people would go, well, if they're there and they're a problem, they're a cancer, they're hurting other people, it makes other people not want to come around, so get rid of this person. Yeah, but their certifications, their time they're available, right? But the time they're available, they're an asshole. Yeah. Okay, so let's work with that person. Let's talk to that person. That's the hard part. It's easy to cut your losses and go, yeah, you're the cancer of the organization. The harder thing to do is to work with that person and make that person have self-actualization of, hey, maybe I am causing some distress. What can help you get better at this? And then we move into the mental health thing, and hey, maybe counseling will help. Maybe some one-on-one mentoring will help. That's the hard part. It's like I said, it's easy to bounce somebody if you need to. I mean, anybody can sign a piece of paper and say, you're no longer allowed in this building. That's fine. But
I have a prediction that we're going to end up. I have a prediction that we are going to end up going back to looking at our standards again. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just saying this for clickbait shit. I'm saying that yes, we have a new president. Yes, he has an agenda, and there's a part of that is to get rid of DEI and get rid of these other programs that, from his point of view, it's an affliction towards keeping the standard or raising the standard. Right. If we continue to lower the standard and let a heartbeat do this job, I think that we're going to continue to have bigger and bigger problems down the road.
Right.
Again, this job doesn't get easier. Now, you may have technology and some innovation that makes certain things that we do, a little bit easier to manage. But, you look at anything that has happened just in this, last, 7-8 months of the news cycle. We've had horrific hurricanes. We've had the West Coast fires.
Right.
We've had the most recent the mid-air collision.
Right.
With the American Airlines and the Black Hawk helicopter, and again, front and center every single time is the firefighters.
Absolutely.
It is. It's the paramedics and the police officers and the firefighters and the fire services on the front line every single time.
Yep.
And we cannot continue to lower our standards just to get people in through the door and then expect for great results to happen when the worst of the worst is happening.
Right.
And, you need certain aptitude, skill, you need a certain level of education, street knowledge. You need all these things to come together to have the right individuals out there performing critical tasks in the worst environments. Okay. This episode of the original Firefighter Podcast is brought to you by Benny's Slots, Wine, Spirits, and Empire Gaming. With 3 locations serving the Rockford area in Roscoe, McChesney Park at Nest, and Cherry Valley at the Harley-Davidson store, Benny's is the place with taste and enough luck to go around for everyone, provided by Empire Gaming. Each location offers fun and entertainment with weekly sports, events, drawings, and live music in a plush environment. As a side note, I recently had my retirement party this past summer at Benny's at Nest in McChesney Park, and they gave us the VIP experience all around. For the best atmosphere, for the best entertainment, head to Benny's for good drinks, good friends, and good times. Stop in at a Benny's location near you today. And that can happen in your, smaller town. That can happen in a metropolitan area, obviously.
Right.
And it does by and large. We're going to have to turn back to our standards. We may be low for a while and cutting people quicker.
Right.
To say this person is not meeting the standard. We don't want to have to deal with their drama later on. We don't want to have to deal with their inability. They don't have good test taking abilities. Right. So at some point, if we are able to drain the swamp a little bit in order to refill it with capable candidates and get back to a message of give more of yourself, expect less to be given to you, but do it in that patriotic way.
Right.
Kind of almost like what Pete Hegseth has said about what he wants to do with the Department of Defense is get the DOD back to wartime.
Back to the basics. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is going to have to happen with the fire service as well.
Right. And I think it's going to be full circle, right? So you have all the entities that govern the fire service. You state fire marshal, OSHA, all the things. And they all have their own thing. They're laying out more paperwork and saying, hey, you need to have this. And the fire service, when I started, you were supposed to have your basic certification to be able to go into fires. I was 16 years old.
Yep.
They threw a pack on me and said, hey, you can crawl underneath a fire truck. You can go into a fire. All good. And
same.
It's crazy, right? And now I look at those departments that still have those exact same standards and go, what is going on here?
Right.
But they're suiting the needs. They feel they're suiting the needs of their community because they have more numbers. It would be argued that I have firefighters that are 18 years old that have their basic certifications through the fire marshal's office, and people would argue they're not 21. They should not be going into a fire. That's an argument, right? And right or wrong, that's an argument. But it was easy when I got my basic certification. I took one class. I was certified I was going to be a firefighter. And now you've got all the different certifications that you have to get. And it seems to be harder and harder and harder for people to get certified. And all the you had to have 8 hours of hazmat when I did my basic firefighting stuff. And now you have to have more than that. And there's more things that that we're laying on these firefighters to say, hey, you can't do the fun shit until you do all these things and pass all these classes. Where for me, the numbers are skewed because in 1996 when I got on, it was you get to do all the fun shit the day you walk in the door. Right.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And now
right.
it could be 3 years before you ever see the inside of a building that's on fire.
Right.
But that goes back to that transparency and expectations. We're going to give you all the training so you can be safe. We're going to give you all the knowledge you need. We're going to take care of you if, heaven forbid, you get hurt. We're going to make sure we have all this stuff that backs up why we're doing what we're doing. But when you get certified and you get to do these things, we'll show you that it pays off. We'll show you that this is the greatest job. We'll show you that we all have the ability to love this job and make a career out of it. And that's what I tell our young people is, I would love you to stay in Stillman Valley the rest of your life. That'd be great because some of the ones that have amazing work ethic, I hate to lose. But my hope is we train you well enough to get you out there and you can make a career of this. I can't put you on Stillman Fire because my full-time spots are full. I'm currently in my position. If somebody moves from one of those spots, gladly put on those people with the good work ethic to take the spot of people with good work ethic.
Right. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're able to move someone from a paid on call position. Is that what you guys call it? Your combination department.
Yep.
So
paid on call. So since we have a contract that
I didn't know if you did paid on premise where people actually pull a full shift. Or,
yeah, so we do it in nighttime. We have paid on premise people, but our contract people are the 24/48.
Okay,
they're at the station, and then contract. So paid on call. So when the pager goes off and says we have a structure fire, people are coming from home. Our full-time staff inside the station are going, and then people are coming in from home still. So,
yeah. Do you think that is the model to work that to go with in a combination department where you almost kind of have like step progression, if you will, for if you started out as a paid on call, you move up to paid on premise. Once a spot becomes open, they can move into a full-time position.
It's a great way to do it. I was lucky enough when we got our referendums to put on full-time staffing that everybody that applied for that spot was already on our department. But it wouldn't be too bad to bring somebody in from the outside. If they were certified and capable and they were the best candidate to bring in, then I'd put somebody on from the outside, and I would encourage them to move to Stillman Valley because then when the tones went off when they weren't on shift, they could come in and staff the station, or they could go on a backup call.
It's got to be disheartening a little bit. I'm imagining that if you have say a group of people, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 people that are paid on call, they want to be in one of those full-time positions, should it come from them? Should it get opened up to everybody? I don't know. And then when they're not selected, I mean, I have to imagine that they look at that and they go, well, what am I doing here?
Yeah, most of them are working. When we pay for certifications, nobody's going to get their paramedic license, and not nobody, I hate to say that. Very few people are going to go through the process of getting their paramedic license these days and then do it as a volunteer thing just on the side. Nobody has that time. Nobody has that money.
The CEUs alone.
They just can't do it.
Yeah.
So hopefully if we get them through their paramedic class, they give us their time when they're not at their full-time job. But they also use that education they got paid for by Stillman Fire to go out and get a career. Hopefully, the way I would love for them to think is, hey, I really appreciate everything they did for me. So on my off days, when I'm available, I'm gonna respond to calls that Stillman Fire has.
Yeah.
And that works really well. It's a great model, right? So that's what I did. That's the way I would love to see people do it. I've also gotten a call from area chiefs, full-time departments, the municipal departments that have said, hey, you guys got a pretty good thing going down there in Stillman Valley. So we would love... you guys got a pretty good thing going on in Stillman Valley. We got this guy that we want to hire, but he's not a paramedic yet. We love his work ethic. We like what he's doing. Can you guys put him through BOF and paramedic or whatever the basic classes were at the time? He'll live in your district. He already said he'll get a place in your district. But when he's done, he's going to come work for us. Mm-hmm. And my response is absolutely. Because it's going to take him 2 years to get his paramedic and all this other stuff if he's working a part-time job or full-time job, whatever. He's going to take him 2 years to get this stuff. For those 2 years, he can give dedicated service to Stillman Fire. And at the end of the 2 years, I'm going to thank him for everything he's done for us. And I'm going to say, hey, if you stay in Stillman and you can help us out, even if you're a full-time firefighter, that you can't work for another paid on call fire department or be a volunteer on the side. A lot of departments are like that. That's fine. Can you help out your district in any other ways? Can you promote us positively to the community when it's time for a referendum? Can you come to our open house as a city firefighter and show up and say, hey, you know what? I chose to live in this district because I trust the aptitude of the paid on call guys here, because I trust their work ethic and the way they do their training. Those things are priceless for a department like ours. And we see that with a lot of our people.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's one of the things I love most about being a fire chief where I'm at.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I want to come to something about going back to the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, and I've already referenced that. Original firefighter, we stand behind those on the front line. We want to think about their mental health.
Yep.
And we give back to that. We support their mental health, and whether people talk about it, outwardly, and they say, sometimes I do struggle.
Yep.
Or if you keep it to yourself, we all have something that we're kind of struggling with, I believe. What does the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association do in terms of any kind of mental health support for firefighters in Illinois?
So we're working with CESA. We have a representative with CESA and working with the mental health initiatives. I'll be in D.C. in a week and a half, and that's definitely something that we bring up to our representatives as supporting those programs that help with mental health in the fire service, seeing that it's on the, it's a buzzword, right? It's a buzz phrase. It's a buzzword. 25 years ago, it was safety. Anything got money thrown at it that said safety. Now mental health gets money, and that's great. And we're going to take advantage of that, just like we do in a small town fire department.
Yeah.
So talking to people, raising awareness, making sure that we inject ourselves in any programs in the state that have to do. We look at every single bill that's out there that has anything to do with the fire service. We have an amazing legislative team for the Illinois Fire Service or Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, and they get behind anything that's going to help us out with mental health.
Does that legislative team, or when you you're out in D.C. and you're speaking with, I'm assuming, congressmen and things of that nature? I mean, is it being articulated very clearly? Again, you talked about transparency. Another buzzword today.
Absolutely.
Transparency.
Yeah, we just use it.
Yeah, we do. And the difference is living up to it.
Right.
Okay, let's just be clear, is that we throw out a lot of things. It's living up to it and having proof that you are doing that. I'm curious though, when you go out there, are we being clear with our congressmen and women and saying, firefighters are literally killing themselves doing this job, one way, shape, or form. And I mean it from they're getting occupational diseases, heart and lung, testicular cancer, breast cancer, occupational cancers, right? Throat cancer, is coming up. So there's that. There's the other element where firefighters are taking their lives.
Right.
Are we saying that clearly? Cut and dry to the powers that be out in D.C., for example. Right. Are we saying it that there's a problem?
Right.
Are we facing that problem?
Yeah, I think we are. I think the initiatives that are out there spell them out. And I think when we approach our representatives, at least in the state of Illinois, whether they have an office in Springfield or an office in D.C., I think we go out prepared with things that are in their face. We get a few minutes to talk to them. When you get time to talk to your representative when you're out in D.C., it's they look at it as, hey, we're going to shake your hand, we're going to get a picture with you and your challenge coin, and it's going to be good because next time I say I want to support somebody, they can do that. But I don't want to cut. I don't mean to cut. I'm always fascinated by these Congress people that have the biggest coin collection that I've ever seen inside their offices. Yeah, and it looks like it's always, and it's fun. I mean, and I am making a little bit of a tease here, where it's like man, you got a lot of challenge coins here. You've taken a lot of challenges. It looked like. Yeah, but you haven't supported anything.
Yeah, but are you doing anything with it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is making sure that we don't just go out there for a picture, and that's what some people you're going out there to get a picture. Asking, yeah, and we use that time definitively to express our issues, and not only to express issues, to say, how would you be willing to support this? And sometimes it's I'm going to keep my eye out for this bill, or I'm going to have one of my assistants print this out. I need to take a look at this more before I can tell you openly that I'm going to support it, because there's so many different factors on whether they can and can't, depending on their party and so forth. And I get that, because they got to play,
or where they're getting money from.
Yeah, and then they got to play that game. But them looking at us in the face, shaking our hand, and saying, "Hey, I'm hearing what you're saying. Let me see what I can do," has worked for us in the past. And I've been the fire chief, or I haven't been the president for more than just since October, but I was the first vice president and the second vice president. And I've been out there to do this and making those relationships. It's about building those relationships. Yeah. And being able to pick up my cell phone when I see a bill come across and text one of our, federal representatives on my cell phone and say, "Hey, something just came across my desk. I think you need to see it," is really important. And unless you have those relationships, several hundred fire departments can go out and meet with a representative, and he'll never remember who they are because they took a picture and that was it. But staying in their ear and building that relationship and saying, "Hey, I don't call you for much, but this one's important." Those are the relationships that need to be built. Yeah. So we can follow up with those people that can make the decisions.
Well, I can't think of very much else that's more important. Mm-hmm. Again, we're kind of coming full circle to the beginning of our conversation, that if we continuously say that our people are the most important thing, okay, well, the individuals that are inside of each of these organizations, from West Coast to East Coast, and North and South, every person within an organization, a fire department, a municipality, a fire protection district, on the box, the paramedic box, they're the people. So when we say it in black and white, we go, "Hey, the people are the most important thing." Right. They're real people, and that's the advocacy that I hope that is being driven by organizations, such as Illinois Fire Chiefs Association, or any of the other acronyms, of course. And the show, this brand of itself is we want to walk the walk and talk the talk, and do it meaningfully, so that people that are in those places of power, like out in DC, that they do understand that lives are truly on the line. It's not the people necessarily that are always calling 911. It's the ones that are answering the call. Yeah. Their lives are on the line. Yeah. And we're seeing it in the data. The data is proving it. Right. And I mean by the data, to be very, 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 very clear, the data could be as simple as you're seeing a very big drop in recruitment. And then you're seeing a very big drop in retention. Exactly. Because people are getting into it and going, "Wait a minute, they're looking down the long road," right? And what we're doing as a veteran of the fire service, you yourself, is that we're saying, "No, just hang in there. It's going to be all right. It's going to be okay." But you got to make it okay, for them. Right. Right. And we can tell them all day long. We can tell them how much we love it. So that's just the first part. Then the other parts of the data that start to trickle in is that once a person's been doing this for a while, right? They're in it for 10 years. They're in it for 15 years. Then they start to see some mental incapacities. Then they start to see maybe a test result come back that's questionable. Right. Okay. This stuff is not hard to understand. They're giving a life of service to the homeland. What are we doing for them? Yeah. And I think part of it goes back to, do you believe your own bullshit? Right. So when I sit here in front of a camera and a microphone and I say the things, do I buy into it myself? So being able to sit yesterday in my office and say, "Hey guys, I'm heading out a little early. I'm heading to counseling." And to be able to have that and be very open for people and to be a fire chief and to have people know that I'm an overwhelmingly positive guy. I mean, around 90% of the time, people do not see me frustrated. Okay. I have my own avenues. I talk to my wife, I talk to my kids. But that's infectious too. Yeah. And I still think it's so important. Our department subscribes to an EAP program. And so any firefighter's family member can call the EAP and they can get the help that they need. And it's mental health, it's legal help, it's financial help. They can call this number to get advice on all these things.
And we push that not as like first line, hey, we're going to push it on every single member. But if our officers and our fire chief and our board of trustees can look at a firefighter and say, we got your back. You need some time off, fine. We want you to get better so you can be a better advocate of this organization. So here, call this number. They've helped me. Mm-hmm. They can help you. And believing in it and not just saying it, I think is huge for everybody in the fire service. And I think a lot of times we tell people, we want your mental health to be good so you can be good in this fire service.
Oh, yeah.
But we spend a lot of time in the fire service beating them down and not helping them, and you talk to frustrated firefighters and you go, man, this seems like a real simple fix. Mm-hmm. Maybe if we can somebody could talk to you about the root of this problem, then your fire service career could be great. Nothing hurts me more than seeing a person that despises coming to work every day. I wake up every single morning excited to go to work. And that is no bullshit. You can ask my wife and my kids every single day. I might have people that I work with that day that I'm like, this might be exhausting, but I still love going to work every day. I had a second grader tell me one day I was helping with fire prevention, and I was in my uniform, and he pulled on my shirt and he said, Chief Chad, whatever he said. And he said, do you know that you're the only person that gets to wake up every morning and put a badge on that says Fire Chief of Stillman Valley Fire Department? And to this day, this was, 14 years ago. To this day, I still think about that when I'm changing my uniform, all my brass over or whatever I'm putting on there. I still think about that. And that hit me hard. Like, I'm the only one that gets to do it. So I need to honor that position because I'm the only one that gets to do it. I'm not just a random guy that gets to go out and do a job that everybody else gets to do. Similar, yes, but I'm the only one in my town that gets to do it. And I owe it to the people that rely on me and rely on our department to take that seriously. And that means taking care of our people. And that means not just saying it, but believing my bullshit. So,
well, I think that's a great story. And I'm glad that you shared that with us, because that right there gets back to something that was said previously, just so that we can be clear about this, is that, when we talk, or when I said earlier that, expect less, give more. Mm-hmm. Okay. That does not mean that firefighters, paramedics, the police officers, again, those in the front line, I think they deserve more. Mm-hmm. I do. I think that you're going to get to a point in time, if it's not going to be beefed up by proper staffing, if it's not going to be, more units on the street, however you say that. Yeah. You cannot continue to do more with less. You cannot continue that forever.
Hit a breaking point somewhere.
And at some point, something's going to break, something's going to give. You're going to have to pay the very, very good, professional, well-knowledged, well-skilled, well-standardized firefighter, mm-hmm. who is also a paramedic, who is also maybe a peace officer, all the things. You're going to have to pay them.
Right.
Okay, that is also a part of the culture, is to get to that wage that basically kind of shuts you up. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you are getting paid pretty freaking well.
Right.
That being said, but to be able to get back to this culture where you, as an individual, you are proud once again to, when you have to move your brass from mm-hmm. one uniform shirt to the other, that you get back to feeling like, man, I'm really proud that I get to pin these on my uniform. Yeah. That I get to put this on and go do this service.
It's a great feeling.
It is a great feeling. Yeah. There is no better feeling in the world from my point of view.
Right.
I'm sure someone else out there can be like, I can beat that. And like, okay, that's fine. Please let us know. Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah. And I don't want to get beat up on what you just said. We're going to have to pay those well-trained, well-educated people. And a lot of times we talk about, we have to pay them that wage. 70-something% of the state is dealing with volunteer departments. Yeah. And they're still trying to get well-educated, well-trained, experienced people.
But most of the fire service today is still in, not full career.
Right. So paying those people comes in different forms, right? Mm-hmm. So paying the volunteer person that has paramedic license, that's fire officer 1, fire officer 2, firefighter 3, all the things, and they're taking time out of their day to give you their skills and time and energy. and they're doing it well, means they're a great asset. And you as an administration have to go, we still don't have money to give you.
Yeah.
But people don't just thrive on money. If you're doing it for a career, you have to advocate for yourself, and you have to look for what's going to better you and your family. In the volunteer and paid on call world, there's a huge struggle of how do we give you more of stuff we don't have? So we have to look at, in these volunteer and paid on call settings, what is it people need? They need to feel accepted. They need to feel like the job that they're doing is actually helping. They need to know that if they get hurt, and they're taken off of their full-time job, that paid on-call job has workman's compensation that's going to be able to take care of them and their family if they get hurt. They have to know that we champion their mental health and their family's mental health. They have to know all these things going into it, so they're willing to do a job that would pay them $100 and something thousand over here, but we can't give them a dime. And that's a real struggle and a real balancing act for 70+% of the state. But people are doing it, and people are working for zero pay. They're working for that steak dinner every year that I used to get when we were a volunteer department. Now, the good thing that a lot of departments are doing is saying, hey, you have all these skills. We would love you to do it somewhere else as well, for a lot of reasons. But part of it is to keep up proficiency. You can't be a paramedic on a department that gets 6 calls a year, and maintain your skills.
No,
so
right,
you got to do it somewhere where you're going to be able to use it efficiently. And I think that's what we're trying to do, with Stillman is go take your career, go work someplace, work hard. And when you have time, come hang out at your hometown fire department. If you're not one of our full timers, if you're one of our paid on call, and our door's always opening up for my office all day long. There's people in and out, and they'll come and hang out for a few hours. The full timers are doing their work and, doing what they're supposed to be doing. And other people come in, and when we get a fire, it's this vehicle after vehicle, and if they feel like it's their home, if they feel like they're appreciated, they're going to come back and want to do more.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love your message. That's a great message.
Yeah.
As we kind of wind down, I'm making sure that we get back to something that's about Original Firefighter. Is that it's not just about the job all the time. You are a whole person. This is not just 24/7, 365 days a year.
Right.
So, you've been now in the fire service for a long time. You've been the fire chief for 15 years. You're now the president of Illinois Fire Chiefs Association. Congratulations, by the way, on getting
Thanks.
that position.
I love it.
And we, look forward to the good things that you do there. What are you doing on your off days when you get them? What do you do on your off days?
I've got my own 2 children, and I have 2 amazing stepchildren, and they're all kind of adults. My youngest is a 16-year-old, going to be 17-year-old. He's a cadet on the fire department. He has the exact same gear locker that I had when I joined the fire department in Stillman. Pretty surreal for me. Every day I go, man, this is weird.
You have a son. You have a son that's on the fire department.
Yeah, he's on the fire department.
That's got to be awesome for you.
It's wild. It's wild. He's a
Nicely
cadet,
done.
But
Yeah.
it's wild. It really is. So,
like you said, 3 years from now, he gets to go into a building burning pit.
and it's really, we should not talk about that. No, yeah. I couldn't be more proud of him. I couldn't be more honored to do that. But I have my stepson is getting more and more involved in wildland fighting and firefighting's been on some deployments now, and total kudos for those guys. And my 2 daughters are both doing amazing things. So I spend a lot of time with my wife doing little weekend trips. We don't have the time because of my involvement with the Illinois Fire Chiefs and my job to take big, long, week-long stuff.
Right.
But we do a couple little trips here and there. Once a month, we're probably going on a 3-day weekend where we just go and we disappear into some state we've never been to. So you're able
to shut it off, though, are you? Or
I don't know that shut it off. It's still very tough for me to when I first became fire chief, you want to hold on to all the incidents. You want to be, I can't leave. I can't because I'm going to miss something. And in my world, as the fire chief in a small town, I'm 99% of the time, I'm the first person at a fire. It's not an engine pulling up. I'm either coming from the station and I beat them there, or I'm coming from my house and I'm out at my door before they gear up and get on the rig.
Right, I got you.
So, it's not like a municipal where the chief or incident commander is going to be there later. So for the longest time, it was tough to shut off because I'm like, well, are they going to do all the same things that I would do? Mm-hmm. And I got to a point pretty quickly of, no, not everybody's going to do things like I do. And that's fine. I have to trust that they're educated enough, talented enough, dedicated enough to be able to pull up onto a scene and handle things without me being there.
Yeah.
And I really love that. I love seeing people that I saw start in the fire service 17, 18, 19 years ago, and seeing them come on as a cadet to now being a captain on the fire department, or a lieutenant, and making decisions. And it's really cool for me. So I definitely can disconnect on those weekends. I'll still get phone calls and stuff, but for the longest time, my trips were anytime I left Stillman Valley, anytime I left Illinois, it was always for a fire department conference or something I was teaching at someplace across the country. I was in California, I was in Florida, I was teaching, I was at the National Fire Academy. It was always a trip for work. And because I have such an amazing board of trustees, they came in when I became fire chief and said, you're either going to take your vacation and use it for vacation,
right,
or we're going to force you to use your vacation. Because I just didn't do it. I was just always at the fire station. But I'm still the guy that wakes up in the morning and gets to the fire station by 5:30 because I like being there. You know, and it's just, and since
it's a good feeling.
Yeah, since I've been married to my wife, she's pretty adamant that I take off by 4 a little after, and I come home and I have a work-life balance, which I didn't have before. And I'll tell you, my mental health is so much better now that I have a work-life balance and I'm not at the station from 5 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. And my kids have all helped me with that. My wife's been instrumental in that. Yeah. And even the staff at the fire station going, you need to go home. And it's not, hey, I'm involved in all their stuff, so I need to leave, which I can definitely tell. Maybe sometimes that's it. But for the most part, it's you've been here for like 3 days straight, you should go home. Or you have a fever, you shouldn't be here. I know, but I have work to do. I need to get work done. Yeah. Go home. We don't want you here. Yeah. But people that are workaholics and love their job, when it's time to go to work, you want to go to work. And we promote, obviously, life, good work-life balance. Yeah. That's a good thing. And now it's great.
It does get back to, that mental health, effort.
Yeah.
That again, this shouldn't be buzzwords, that we throw around in the fire service, making ourselves feel good about, hey, look at what our initiative is. And then you yourself, you're not taking part in that.
Yeah. I could be a trash chief that way.
Right. So that's always good though. And it is hard. Right. I can only, it is hard. And as a chief officer with the department that I was with, I can remember, thinking that, oh yeah, I'm going to a 2-week class to the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and somehow you trick your brain into thinking like, I'm going on a vacation
every time.
Every time. And I've always had a good time. I've had a great time being out there.
Great people, and I'd look at that as, to me, it was a vacation. It was, I'm not responding to calls. I'm not responsible for those things at home, but I am going out and doing something else I love. Yeah, I'm educating myself, but it's going to better my work life. And my kids, I do
you're just making the connections. Yeah. That are, some of them are lifelong, Yeah. And they still are. I have some great friends that I met at the National Fire Academy. Yeah. And I work with one of them now down in Arizona, for a college down there. And, I call him Arizona Bob. So whenever I get to throw his name into a podcast and then say, hey, make sure you listen.
Yeah, listen.
But Arizona Bob is great. And, but again, then, that's the National Fire Academy. Right. That's going to teach and going to all these classes, and they're all across the country. Yeah. There's so many opportunities that you can do that. And if you can even just do that and step out of your own backyard, I think you're doing something good for yourself. We do promote even just one step further is, if you find a way to shut it off completely, go up to Mackinac Island in Michigan and look at the rocks. I don't know, pick up Petoskey rocks.
Yeah, my wife's real good at making me try to do that. So we do, we spend a lot of time doing that, just getting away and saying, hey, we have 3 days where we don't have to talk to anybody. Yeah. Having kids that are, essentially adult age children is amazing. They're doing their own thing. I don't have to be at home for anything. Yeah. They can handle the dogs and so forth. But I do a fallen firefighters kids camp that I've been involved in since its inception, where firefighters from across the country go to a different camp and deal with children who have experienced a loss with their parent. Yeah. And that is probably the most rewarding thing I get to do out of all the things in my career. But that's also a time for me to go and be with fire service personnel. And for me, it's really another time anytime I get to spend time with my kids, and a one-on-one is always a good way for me to shut off the fire department. And this kind of integrates both of them, where I don't feel I'm working. My kids both are counselors at this camp now. I've been there for a long time. I meet a lot of people, and these people become family as you get to know them for years. And, big fires across the country that firefighters hear about and study, whether it be, the Charleston 9 or it be a firefighter in the middle of Nebraska that passes away. Every one of those stories is so important in the fire service, in meeting these children and seeing the way they tell the story. It wasn't this huge thing. It was Dad. But being able to bring that back to my hometown department and to be able to pass that information around from the state, this is why it's important to protect our people, is because these firefighters are someone's dad. These firefighters are someone's family. And that's why we take these mental health initiatives. That's why we worry about your annual screening for cancer and cardiac and all the other things, because of all these things. And I think that's, for me, when you say shut it off, it's real hard for me to shut it off. But promoting that work-life balance, to me, that's a work-life balance, because I'm doing something that's helping me mentally, and being involved. It's still the fire service, but I'm not the fire chief out there. I'm just a guy that's there to hang out with some kids that have been through some shit.
And there's inspiration there too.
It's and
coming back
up.
I'll echo what you said, that it's just, depends on what you get yourself involved in. And sometimes you kind of fall into it. You don't realize, like, I didn't think I was going to go to burn camp for kids. And then all of a sudden you're there and you're looking at some of the stuff going, my life does not suck. Right.
Exactly.
You should really check some things sometimes when you look at certain environments and go, there's a reason that I'm here. And it's bigger than me.
That's that waking up every day with a positive attitude, knowing we've got life pretty good. And that's where, when I approach conflicts on our department, we're a small town department where we don't run our butts off all night long. Most of the time people get to sleep at night. Most of the time they might get woken up once or twice for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, you got a decent paying job where you get to help people, you get free education. And I just don't think there's anything more gratifying. I just don't think you could not convince me that there's a better job. And I know we say that it's the best job in the world, but I'm genuinely one of those people that I could not picture another job.
I couldn't either. And we know what we're saying, and those that are listening and viewing, they know what we're saying as well. There are, and I call them the bleacher creatures. There's a few individuals in the fire service, and I say a few, it could be hundreds of, if not more, but there always will be these people that, that they're in it for the paycheck and not much more. They don't have a lot of heart or passion. It gets back to, there's a cultural mindset. And you could be born with it. You don't really, I can't exactly say like where. I know an event that kind of set me off in the course of the fire service. And I've already told the story before on another show, but I'll never forget that event. But prior to that event, where, I just happened to come upon a fellow high school schoolmate that had been very, very seriously injured on the side of the road. But before then, I know I was already thinking in some way of a public service. And it wasn't, it's not to like, there's a lot of things that are public service, but I was drawn to the exhilaration, the excitement that would come along with jumping on a fire truck and getting out the door, or all the things, and that sort of thing. So I hope that we do find our way in the fire service to get back to some of that cultural mindset where we profess how awesome that the fire service is, and recapture some of that glory and start to whittle away at the negativity that is out there. And it is out there, acknowledging that it is out there for some good reason. And that's the greater conversation I want to continue to have in this community.
Absolutely.
So
like acknowledging people's, acknowledging people's legitimate complaints. You're going to have those people that just complain like we talked about. But, if a lot of people are concerned about something, there's validity there.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's have the conversation. Maybe you can't fix it, but at least there's acknowledgement, and that's like, it goes back to everything in your life and having an argument with your spouse, whatever. A lot of times somebody doesn't, and firefighters inherently want to fix things. Even, and I know some people don't believe this, but even in fire service administration, we want to fix it. We want our people to be happy. We want them to get paid more than any other department. We want all the things, for the most part, I will say that. But we can't always fix it. We don't always have the dollars to fix it. We don't always have the resources to fix it. But what we can do is we can acknowledge it, and we can say, if we're going to work on it, then actually work on it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to work on it, then say, I'm acknowledging, I hear what you're saying. I genuinely hear you. Either I agree with you or I don't agree with you. At this time, it's not something we're prepared to work on. Or I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I might know how I can fix this. Let me work on that. And I think too many times we get, quit your bitching. That's what you get. And that's what people hear. And they're afraid to bring up ideas because they know that if it gets brought up in front of the wrong person, they're going to get squashed. They're going to get silenced. And why go to work every day if you're not going to be heard?
Yeah.
I want to be heard, but I also want my organization to take care of me. That's I want to go to work and I want to feel like I'm part of the team. I want to feel like I'm being taken care of. I'm blessed with a board of trustees that takes care of me, takes care of our department. And I'm blessed with a great group of people at our department that want to take care of our community. And we address the small issues when we can, but we focus on the positive things that we have. And hopefully more people come to our department and say, hey, I want to work with you guys, even if it's for a short time so I can get some certifications. I'll give you 100% of the time that I have. I'll give you 100% of that time while I'm here. And man, we're just lucky. We're just lucky every day.
I appreciate you, Chad. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I'm sure the Stillman Valley appreciates all the work that you do as their fire chief. Congratulations and the best of luck with the Illinois Fire Chiefs Association and all the work that you do there. And if there's any way that Original Firefighter can support you guys, that would be, just welcome to, have the conversation. But that all being said, we just want to say thank you for tuning in. And if you're on the front lines out there, be safe. We hear you. This podcast is here for your off days, and take care.